What happens when two dudes, one a retired Navy SEAL commander in Colorado Springs, and the other a hippie meditation teacher in New York City, get together to discuss living mindfully? That's a great question, because we don't know what will happen either. Raw, uncut, and unapologetic. Welcome to Men Talking Mindfulness with co-hosts John McCaskill and Will Schneider. Each week, we take an authentic dive into how mindfulness continually impacts our lives, deepens our relationships, and allows us to be emotionally alive. We filter all of our conversations through the man box, where we unpack how as men we are expected to act in society, how fighting the authentic human experience is exhausting and damaging, and how mindfulness can help. Now, on to the show.
All right, here we are, John and Will, Men Talking Mindfulness, and we've got a great show lined up for you today. We're very excited about today's show. It's a little bit different. Now, it is our standard, raw, uncut, and unapologetic, but today is, like I said, a little different. It's a special show in that we have two of our guests. They're our guests, but they're also listeners on the show, listeners of the show, Randy Bach and Daryl Roy. They are two self-proclaimed regular guys, quote unquote, who are now mindfulness practitioners. And from our conversation today, you'll see that what mindfulness has done for them, how they overcame obstacles and continue to run into obstacles with the practice. I mean, that's perfectly normal. We all do. And then we'll also learn how mindfulness is for everyone, all genders and sexes, all races, all religions, all ethnicities. It is for everyone, not just the yogis, monks, and hippies. And not that we have anything against those, right? Right, Will?
No. How could we, John?
Right. But yeah, it is for everyone. So we're very excited about this show and to talk about that. And over to you, Will, for some announcements.
Yeah, well, hey, thank you everybody for being here and tuning in. And a couple announcements. Get excited. We're going to keep rocking and rolling with our mindfulness and movement experience. We kick off our next cohort on December 1st. To find out more about this program developed by us and our partners at Movement RX, check out the website movement-rx.com/MTM. Once again, that's movement-rx.com/MTM. Or, and also you can join us for one of our free upcoming workshops. We'll drop the link here in our chat here. These workshops are next week, November 17th at 12 p.m. And then the following week or 2 weeks after that, or week and a half after that, on November 29th. And that's the free webinars on the November 17th and the 29th, for sure.
All right. Well, let's bring up our guests. We're going to bring up Daryl and Randy here. And Will, if you want to intro Daryl, I'll hit up Randy.
Yeah. Hey, there is Daryl there in the blue. Hi, Daryl. How you doing? Thanks for joining us today. Yeah, good. Thank you. So after a career, this is our bio for Daryl. After a career in the U.S. Army and commercial nuclear operations, Daryl founded 3D Media, a tech company bringing augmented reality and virtual reality to military and industrial worlds for knowledge retention, increased safety, and effective training. Daryl is also married and has 3 kids. So thanks for being here, Daryl. Great to have you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, we're excited to have you, brother. And Randy Bach, Randy claims to be just a small town kid from the Appalachian Mountains of Northeast Tennessee, but he has grown into an amazing man, and I believe he was probably an amazing child. A solid husband, father, grandfather, veteran, military and veteran spouse, and a military retiree who never stopped dreaming. Randy feels truly blessed beyond anything he could have ever imagined, from being given a chance to enter the world's greatest Air Force, amen to that, on a moral character waiver, and then going on to achieve the rank of E9, which, for those of you who are not familiar with the military, E9 in the Air Force is Chief Master Sergeant, and that is no small feat. So that's definitely something to celebrate. And then he goes on. He found his beautiful bride, marrying his amazing wife, and raising 2 daughters, and now being blessed with 3 grandkids. Randy continues chasing his dreams in his post-military career while living a more mindful and happier life. And then for the both of you, Randy and Daryl, happy belated Veterans Day, and super excited to have you guys both on the show. All right,
Thank you.
Will.
Yeah.
Grounding practice, brother. Let's do it.
Oh yes. Oh yeah. Like guys, just so you know, like I get so wrapped up in like, okay, here we go. We're gonna take off. It's lunchtime, and then before we take off into this journey that's become Men Talking Mindfulness, we like to ground everything. We like to kind of like, settle on the launch pad before we begin to take off into this journey. So, so we're refueling with calm, with connection, with just being more peaceful and more present. So we do that with our breathing. We're going to exercise that 4-7-8 breath today. This is a great way if anybody's hearing the show the first time, or maybe you haven't heard this breathing technique in a little bit of time. This is a great way if you're feeling all jacked up or all jazzed up, or need to get some anxiety out, or kind of ground yourself a little bit deeper. This simple recipe of breathing, it's 4-7-8. So we're going to inhale for 4 seconds, hold that inhalation for 7 seconds. And on the exhale, it's going to be a long count of 8, but we're going to kind of purse our lips a little bit and exhale out through a little hole in our mouth. So is how the exhale flows out of the body all the way for that long count of 8. All right, here we go, guys. So wherever you are, whatever you're doing out there, if you're seated, bring both feet on the floor. John likes to take off his shoes. I hope you don't have smelly feet today, John.
Got
for
boots
the people
on
around
today.
you. All right, we'll keep your boots for Veterans Day or whatever. I'm just kidding. Right? Or even if you're driving or you're listening, wherever whatever you're doing, you can do this, or maybe just pause and stop for a second, and we can do this breathing technique. So with that said, here we go. Close your eyes if that's safe for you. Exhale the breath all the way out. You can exhale through the mouth or through the nose for this first initial exhalation. And we'll just take a nice big inhale, proactive inhale for 4 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Now we're going to hold that breath, that big balloon, for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and then take that breath through the mouth. And for a long count of 8. Keep going. 4, 3, 2, 1. Good. Inhale again for 4. See if you can create a bigger balloon in your torso. Hold that breath for 7, 6. Exhale out, big, long, slow. 6, 5. Keep going. 4, 3, 2, 1. And again, fill right away. Inhale 4. Big breath. Notice the difference of that big inhale. Holding that balloon, and just notice that experience. But try to stay soft in your face, jaw, and shoulders. And here we go. Let it all the way out. 8, 7, 6, 5. Keep on. Push it all the way out. Even as you push out, pull that diaphragm up below the rib cage. And here we go. 2 more rounds. Inhale 4. Big inhale through the nose, holding that breath and that balloon for 7, 6, 3, 2, 1. Exhale out. Good. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Last one. Inhale, big 4. Holding 7. Exhale out. 8, 7, 6. Keep pushing. 3, 2, 1. Good. And a smooth inhale, easy. Just coming back to a normal quality of breath. Maybe it's a little more crafted and shaped. Just notice how you're feeling. Notice your feet on the ground, your butt on the seat, or your hands on the steering wheel. This is being present in the breath. And the breath practices help us to release stress so we can kind of release that fog of the mind and become more present. When you're ready, open your eyes. And let's start the show, everybody. Go away. This is the first. We haven't had 4 people on the show in a while, John.
It's been a while. It could be pretty chaotic, but we'll have fun. Raw, uncut, and unapologetic, right?
Always.
So, let's kick it over to you guys. We'll start with you, Daryl. I know we read your bio there, but if you could just give a little bit more intro about who you are, and then specifically how you came to mindfulness and how you came to be a listener of the show. I mean, how did that happen, brother?
Right. Yeah. So, like Will had kind of introduced me, I spent some time in the Army. On the civilian side, I worked in nuclear ops, started the company that we are currently operating probably about 5 years ago. We grew really fast. And the funny thing is about that is that when you have a company that grows really fast, everyone tends to think that that's like the holy grail of business, right? Start a company, get it all ready, and then just rock it, just go off like a rocket ship. But the thing is that when you're someone who's this is your first company, you're figuring so much out. It creates so many stressors and so many areas for conflict. If you add to the fact that one of my partners is my bride, that adds a whole new dynamic of challenges both to marriage and to business. Right? People always talk about being your own boss. Well, first off, if you own a company, if you're a part of a company and you're a true leader, you are never your own boss. You have more bosses than you've ever had before in your life. Every single one of your team members. That's right.
Yeah.
And then by nature, your boss is also your bride, right? When you have a well-balanced, you have a well-balanced marriage where you respect each other and you take the things that the other person thinks and feels, and whether you agree with it or not, you have respect for that and you respond appropriately. I'll tell you right now, I'll be the first to tell you that that's not always my first response to respond like that, but those are things we continually work on. So that whole path right there, those stressors that I mentioned, the constant drive to always be the best version of myself that I could be for my team, for my family, and then recognizing or not recognizing rather the fact that you're a flawed human being and there's absolutely no chance of being perfect. It creates a lot of insecurity, or it brings out insecurity that already existed, which leads to additional anxiety and stressors. And so you get to a point in all this, throw in the fact that you work an insane amount of time building a company or building a career, whether it's in the military or in the private sector, whether you're an employee of a large corporation, a small business, or someone who founds one. If you care about what you do, you put a lot of pressure on yourself, and it leads to burnout. And I was really blessed in that I started to recognize those indications of burnout. And so, John, this was right when you were getting out, and we had connected because you're from generally more or less the same area that I'm from, and we had connected and started to see what you were doing with what was happening in the podcast, you and Will. And honestly, I'm going to be completely honest. Like prior to that, I was way too tough to do meditation or yoga or any of those types of things, right? But I started to look at those different things, started to be more open-minded.
Can I ask you, Daryl, when you say tough, what do you mean when you say tough?
I mean, that toxic masculinity mindset that we were talking about, right? I'm too cool. I'm too tough to do that, right?
I'm fine.
Yeah,
I got this. I can muscle this.
Exactly. Embrace the suck and push on, right? That's kind of where I was. And then started listening to the show right around the beginning of season 2 and went back and listened to season 1 and started to actually practice some, got a few apps that started me off on the path. And I'll tell you, it's been pretty impactful. I think it's been impactful in business. It's been impactful in my marriage and just about every aspect of life. I haven't been perfect with practicing every day, but again, even that is a process that I'm recognizing and giving myself grace for. So
there you go. Yeah,
Over.
It's not perfection. It's not perfection, right? It's progress, and they call it practice for a reason. In that it does take practice, and you're going to run into your own obstacles every day, every week. Obstacles that get in the way of you practicing, or obstacles in the practice itself that may cause some problems. And Randy, I'm going to come to you here in a second, but I saw something in our Mindfulness and Movement Experience Facebook page posted by Chris Norris, also a great practitioner, just recently retired from the Navy. Anyway, in this post on the Facebook group, he mentioned something about no amount of anxiety is going to change the future for the better. And then no amount of worrying is going to change the past at all. And
Preach it,
then,
man.
then this part I loved. He said, any amount of mindfulness is going to change the present moment.
Mm.
So
Wow,
I
love
thought
that.
that was powerful, and that kind of wraps into what you're talking about there, Daryl. So thanks for sharing, and love that you're a listener, and love that you're working on your practice, man, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, and here with us today, like awesome.
Yeah.
I'm lucky to be here. I appreciate it very much.
Right on. And Randy, over to you, brother.
Hey, Daryl, man, I'm glad to be here with you. Appreciate it. John and Will, man, this is fantastic, man. Thanks so much. But so for me, how did I end up here? Joined the Air Force, was a troublemaker as a kid. How to get a waiver?
It seems like so many of our guests. Like I was a shit kid.
I was a shit kid.
I'm sorry.
I had to write a letter why I wanted to join. 3 letters of recommendations, go through a whole interview process. Took me almost a year to get in, but I was forever grateful for that. So they took a chance. I'm like, I promise I'll show up to work every day, and they're like, sweet, we'll give you clothes to wear. And you get 30 days of vacation and we'll train you. I'm like, get the hell out of here. This is freaking awesome. Why isn't everybody doing it? So I joined the Air Force for myself. But after 2 enlistments, I was like, man, this is absolutely phenomenal. I'm traveling the world and having a lot of fun. Progressing along, doing pretty well. Met my lovely bride. Lori's fantastic. But over probably the last 10 years of my career, just with my job and everything, I started taking an mental and emotional toll. And I think about 5 years before I retired, my wife came to me and was like, you need to retire. You got to figure out what's going on. And I was like, you don't know what you're talking about. I just need to work out more. I just need to put in more hours. So that's just what I'm going to do. And then, 5 years later, I retired. Retired 13 months ago. Knew something wasn't right and something was off, impacting my relationship with my wife and my kids and everything. I was like, man, I got to fix something. I ended up on a video with Jason Van Camp, Deliberate Discomfort. So I joined his 60-day challenge. I called up my buddy Joe Bright, who at the time just worked for me. We weren't even friends. He worked for me at the time. But I was like, I knew Joe was dependable. And once he committed, he was in. And Joe Bright has a lot of traits that I want in myself. Like, he's somebody that I'm like, man, you have a lot of positive things about you, and I need that in my life. I need positive people in my life. So Joe was all in. And so I spent 60 days in this challenge forcefully listening to John every single day. So my first 60 days of mindfulness were kind of like forced down my throat. And with everything going on, it was like checking the box. You're like, man, I got to get these 6 things done. I got to get these 6 things done. But afterwards, that led me to the mindfulness program, your guys' show, bringing the guests on, hearing everything. I'm like, man, there's other people feeling the same way or having the same thoughts, or people are thinking the same thing as myself. So it's 2021, almost 2022. I can get a Big Mac in like less than 60 seconds. I can click a button on the internet and I have everything I want. Amazon can deliver me something in 1 day, same day shipping and delivery, but I can't get mindfulness in 60 seconds. I can't get it in 1 day. And it's taken a lot of work, and it's deliberate that I have to do that. And I've seen positive changes in not only myself, but my wife and my daughters have seen that too. And they're like, wow, that's pretty cool. And we want to start practicing that as well. So we've kind of been doing that. So it's a lot in a nutshell, but.
No.
Very
nice.
So
what are so you kind of touched on a little bit like where each of you were before you kind of got into mindfulness. And if you want to elaborate a little bit more on that, great. But I also want to go in so what are some of those, or was there a pivotal moment where you're just like, I've got to something's got to change, and then and then you start looking in that direction. Are those moments there, or yeah, please, if you can just go a little bit deeper into like how you kind of found mindfulness or how mindfulness kind of found you. But I think we might have covered that already or something in some ways.
Some of it, yeah.
Randy, would you like to go first?
Sure, man. I'll go first. When I moved back to Las Vegas back in 2018, I started noticing that I needed to do something. I started noticing it back in Korea, a little bit in Italy on my last deployment. But when I got here in the fall of 2018, like I just wasn't sleeping. And then when I would sleep, it'd be 30 minutes, an hour, constantly waking up, living on the rewind and the play button that John and Will, you guys talk about. Never like what's going on. And like, just raised as my parents, they're my heroes, but you got to work hard. You got to get to work before everybody else. You got to stay after everybody else. You just constantly put it in. But I just wasn't sleeping. I was irritable. Man, I was probably an asshole to people that I work with sometimes, unfortunately. And I'm embarrassed to say that. There were times I would just come in and be like, hey, I'm in a shitty mood, so just leave me alone today, or be cognizant of who's going to come through my door, give me a heads up or something. And that's pretty assholey, I think. I'm embarrassed about that. So I went to go see a behavioral therapist for sleep. People that I recommended folks that worked for me to go see, and God bless them, they're just overwhelmed with the amount of people. But she just told me to take at first they gave me Ambien to sleep, and I was like, I took your Ambien pills. I didn't sleep. So then she said, download this app, and I downloaded the app, and I'm like, well, what do you want me to do now? She's like, just pick something. I'm like, just anything? She's like, yeah. And I was like, well, that's not really working. I don't know what you want me to pick. And then
what was that app, if you remember, Randy?
Insight Time.
Insight Time.
Insight Timer.
Meditation app. Yeah.
Yeah, the Calm app. And I'm like, man, you're not giving. I'm coming to you looking for guidance. And then like Dr. Springer talks about when you sit in their office, like they're behind a big desk, a big chair, all their plaques are on the wall. And I'm like, man, what's this? So then they referred me to another therapist. She connected me to these probes and was reading my mind waves while I watched this video, and then would adjust those streams. What was I saw on the screen? I didn't see any changes, but she's like, hey, I'm adjusting it. And then she retired, and she had to get permission to allow me to do that. And I'm like, shit, this isn't working. They sent me to acupuncture. And they said I needed to come every 30 days, but they couldn't see me except every 90 days. I'm like, well, this isn't working. So I'm like, this isn't working. And then when I retired, I told my wife, I don't want to work around the military. It's been great. I'm blessed for everything it's given me, but I need a knee and a break. So the best thing we ever did was prepare financially for retirement, where I wasn't forced to go into another job. And God bless my wife. She's allowed me to take a knee and truly work on myself this past year. And
nice.
Thankfully I came across that video in the book and the challenge and you guys, and man, a little better today than it was a year ago, man.
The challenge that Randy is talking about is the deliberate discomfort challenge under Mission 60, and that has 6 domains. It's 60 days, 6 domains that you have to do something in each day. So there's a spiritual domain. I'm going to forget here on the spots, but spiritual, professional, social, physical, mental, and something else. But the spiritual aspect is mindfulness. It's not religious. And there's a meditation that you do every day, and it starts real small. It's my meditations. And you work up to towards the end, I believe it's a 40 or 45 minute meditation, which is mostly silent, which is pretty difficult. But after 60 days, that's where you're at. And I watched Randy's journey through that. I remember at the very end, you do a video on each one of the domains and what it meant to you, what it was for you. And I remember watching Randy saying something like, "This motherfucker's in my head all day long." I just had to die laughing, man. But it's a great challenge. So if you're interested in it, check it out. Deliberate Discomfort Challenge. Shameless plug for Mission 60. I'll make sure Jason Van Camp pays me extra for that. But anyhow, yeah. What about you, Daryl?
Well, I mean, so for me, I talked about all the things leading up directly, like in the near term, leading up directly to starting with mindfulness. But I'm going to go back a little bit further on this and give you a little bit of insight into why I became that person, right? That person that drove really hard and always had something to prove, and I was always thinking about what's going to happen tomorrow. How do I prepare for tomorrow? What are the things I'm going to do that make tomorrow better than today? And what were the things I did yesterday that made today the way that it is? I was never really in the moment. And one of the big things about that is that when I was really young, I kind of experienced some pretty significant trauma. As we do as men, we compartmentalize, right? We take these things, these tough things that we experience in life, and we pack them in a box and we put them deep, deep down inside, and we stack things on top of them, right? We stack accomplishments, we stack, the work that we put in, all those types of things. And we try to hide it. We never really acknowledge it. But those things are always there, and they're always trying to push their way to the surface. And at some point, you either acknowledge those or you lose yourself, right? Either you acknowledge those things that have influenced you one way or another, or you become someone else that you weren't created to be, right? So, a few years back, I went to a retreat, a men's retreat, and I kind of for the first time actually acknowledged what I had experienced and said it out loud. And the thing about that is when you do that, you expect that that's going to be the healing moment, right? The moment that you're able to heal. But the reality of it is, if you're going to get back down to that box, you got to knock a whole lot of other shit down to get there, right? You think about if you've got a storage unit and you pack something all the way to the back of it, what do you have to do to get that thing you got back there? You got to pull every box out of the way. You've got to pull every box out and you've got to put it to the side. And if you're going to actually unpack that thing that you've hidden back there, you're going to make a mess. You're going to make an absolute mess. And, I did. And while everything still looked good on the surface, right? Everything was still, I was still able to function. Nobody really could see kind of what I was dealing with. Because I didn't want anybody to see what I was dealing with. And I would say to myself that, the support of a community was kind of the thing that was getting me through. And that went a very long way to keeping me relatively stable. But ultimately, your health, your mental health, your healing and your recovery really is something that you have to do by yourself. You can't just pawn that off on other people. Like, you don't do it by yourself, but you have to do it for yourself. And so going through that, I had absolutely no idea how to deal with these things. But what I did recognize is that even though I had acknowledged this event, and even though I had started to unpack these things, I was still distracting myself from actually dealing with them. Distracting myself by thinking about, what the next accomplishment was going to be, what the next goal was going to be that I was accomplishing.
Right.
And mindfulness did a pretty important thing. It forced me to be like in this moment right now. Like, you're not thinking about things that are outside of you. It really, it's the wildest thing. Like, all we're doing, to me, where I'm at in this journey is all I'm doing is thinking about breathing. This simple thing, this thing that we do completely involuntarily, that every living organism that has ever existed on this earth does without ever trying, but to take the time to think about it and to feel it, to put the effort into it, into doing it a certain way. It in this big world, in this huge existence, it takes it down to a small circle, right? That circle that you are in, that space that you occupy, and to only think about that space for a little while. Wow. Prior to doing this, I would think that something like that is a selfish act, right? To tell myself that I need this time, right, just for me, and I need to think about no one else or nothing else. Right. But the reality of it is that if you're going to be someone who serves other people, if you're going to be someone who here for others and who is doing things for them. Like, you can't help people if you can't help yourself. You can't fix problems if you're refusing to work on those that you've got. And, mindfulness really, it's started to, and it is continuing to help me to focus on those things, and to reject the idea that this time for myself is selfish, that it's the most selfless thing that I can do, because thinking about these things sucks. I don't want to do it, right? Focusing on these things, it sucks, man. But if I'm gonna love people the way that we're supposed to, that you're called to, or that we should, you got to love yourself first, right? I mean,
right.
Yeah. There's a commission, and I think every religion or ideology has the idea that you love your neighbor as you love yourself. But what if you don't love yourself? How are you going to love your neighbor? You know what I mean?
So true.
Right.
So that's kind of how.
And I feel part of that. Sorry, John. That part of that confined masculinity, that toxic masculinity. It's like it doesn't allow us to just self-reflect. Or it just doesn't give us that opportunity to be like, well, how am I doing today? What am I feeling? What is the world like around me? What am I? How am I in my relationships? It kind of takes all that away, and I think there's just a massive assumption that it's just like, just go to work and everything will be fine. Just do your duty and shut up. Yeah,
that's right.
I mean, even within the confined masculinity, it in and of itself is a contradiction, in that it talks about, hey, you should be the best provider you can be. Well, the way that you can be the best provider is by actually taking care of yourself. If you're not taking care of yourself, then you can't be the best provider. So you've got to put your oxygen mask on first, so you can take care of those that you love. Because if you don't, you're not going to be able to take care. You're not going to be able to provide for them. So it's kind of a ironic contradiction there in and of itself. But so as far as your guys' practice, and I know we touched on this at the very beginning, it is just that it is a practice. It may not be a daily practice, but what does your practice look like these days? And I mean, absolutely no judgment from our side, and no expectations, but what does it look like for you guys, and how would you tell someone else to get started?
Well, I'll say, so my practice actually, so I think one of the things that I've recognized is that I'm not going to talk about any specific denomination, but prayer is one of the oldest forms of meditation, right? Whatever your faith may be, to slow down and contemplate the things that you're given, to be thankful for those things, to acknowledge the higher power that you believe in and that you're devoted to be thankful for those things that you've been given, and recognize who you are within existence, within creation, and truthfully, that's where a lot of my practice starts. It starts with a prayer. It's a prayer that focuses on, give me the strength to be in the moment, to appreciate the things that you've given me, the things that you've taken away, and the places that I'm being led, the people in my life, and help me to find where I should be right now, in this moment. And to feel the things that I should be feeling, because as I mentioned earlier, one of the things that I tried to do for so long was to not feel. One thing I'm not very proud of is that I used to tell my kids whenever they would try to guilt me into things, as children do innocently, right? I would say that doesn't work on me. I don't have emotions. The Army never issued those to me, right?
Wow.
And it's funny now, but looking back on it, like, that was a terrible thing to say. Like, it's not healthy. I have a son, and I do not want him to think that emotions and feeling things is not masculine, because I recognize now he does everything I do. He follows me around like a shadow. And I started to recognize, both with my kids, with my team, like, you have to model the behavior that you want in people, and focusing on those types of things, and asking for the wisdom to know what not to say and what not to do, as much as what to do and what to say, has been really and it's not just while you're practicing. It's in every moment. I think there's always a place for, even if it's like a 5 or 10 second, slow down, breathe. What's man? You guys mention it all the time on the podcast. The acronym.
The BAMO.
BAMO. Yes.
BAMO. Breathe and move on. Yeah.
So that's it's pretty powerful. So.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. What about you, Randy?
Man, Daryl, I have 2 daughters, and I didn't tell them necessarily like I don't have emotions, but I would tell them like just man up, just move on.
Man up, ladies.
Don't cry over spilt milk. This world's not going to give you anything. So yeah, and my grandson's here now. He just moved. My daughter's getting stationed out here, so that I'm re-changing my whole dynamics with the relationship that I have. And John introduced me to a timing kit that I'm using with all my grandkids and teaching them that stuff and teaching myself about emotions. And then it's okay to feel those things. But for me, some things that I try to stay faithful to. Before my grandson got here, I tried to get up early. Well, I would get up early before anybody else and just have my me time with my dog. But since my grandson gets here, he's been here, like he throws wrenches into my calendars. But something I picked up from the podcast here that I try to do is the 4 breaths. And when I wake up in the morning before I get out of bed, even if anything's going on, I'll do the 4 breaths. A gratitude prayer, just kind of like you mentioned, some push-ups and a 20-ounce glass of water. And I'm like, sweet, I've accomplished something already.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. And then throughout, something I picked up from Will and John as they've talked over the weeks is I used to just think that I needed to practice it in the morning or at lunch or something. But now I've just started doing the breaths when I'm driving my car or when I'm standing in line or when I'm just out and about. I've just started to incorporate those breathing things into my normal daily lives, just so hopefully one day it'll become just the norm. And then I'm part of some of us from the challenge have created our own little weekly Zoom session to hold ourselves accountable. We meet every Wednesday on Zoom with Richard Charette and Noga Kessler, Michael Taylor, and Joe Bright. And we talk about these pillars, but we spend most of our time talking about emotional and spiritual. And we're really diving into this on a weekly weekly topic. And when you talk about prayer, Daryl, a lot of the most Zen people we see that have some sort of spiritual connection, whatever religion that may be. So thanks for bringing that up, man.
No, I mean,
jump
you
on
mentioned
that
something.
real quick.
Yeah,
Will,
go for it,
if
Chuck.
I could. So, I mean, Will and I have been discussing what next season is going to look like. And I think we're going to actually do an episode on mindfulness and religion. Because one of the questions I get quite often is, well, isn't this Buddhist or isn't this one religion or another, what we're teaching? And mindfulness is not exclusive to any religion.
Right.
And if I personally am a Christian, and there's meditation mentioned in our Bible, right? And I won't get too far down that path, but I've seen meditation in the Bible, and I believe it. But I also believe, separate and distinct from what it talks about in the Christian Bible, is that meditation can be prayer, like you mentioned, Daryl. Or it can actually support your prayer, right? A lot of people believe, whichever belief you may be in, whichever religion, that when you read the scriptures, that's your higher power talking to you, and when you pray, that's your ability to speak to your higher power. But if your mind is all over the place when you sit down to read or when you sit down to pray, you're not going to be able to pick up on that message and hear it, one. And two, you're not going to know what to pray about. So I feel that, I personally incorporate this into my personal spiritual practice, in that I meditate, then I read, and then I pray, or vice versa as far as the reading and prayer. But I always start with the meditation so that my mind is settled, so that I know what to speak to my higher being about, and I know what that higher being is saying to me. So I just wanted to touch on that. Will, I know you had something else.
Yeah, I just think, I think as far as like religion and mindfulness, it's like, it's just not, and none of this stuff is religious. It's all like spiritual, or it's spirituality, but I like to even boil it down even simpler. It's energy practices. It's like being aware of how we are energetically, or if we're completely unaware of how we are energetically in this moment. And then if we're, and what mindfulness does is I want to talk about emotions shortly as well. And how it's like, okay, where am I emotionally? And if I'm in a stress state, or I'm just kind of all, away from myself, meaning like not like forgetting like who I can be and grounding myself here and now, then, how effective are you going to be? I mean, how, like, I like what you said, John, we're not going to, that reading that scripture is that connection to the higher power. It's like, if you're in a completely distraught state of mind, how can you receive that wisdom? And how can you take that wisdom and be a force for that wisdom in the world? Because like all the religions, they kind of come back to the golden rule, right? It's like, do unto others as you do unto yourself. I mean, I wrote a blog about this a while ago. It's in 13 different religions. They just talk about the golden rule in 13 different ways, but the principle is the same. And that comes back to what you said earlier. And both of you had talked about me time, and the fact that I matter, and what we've, talked about the man box kind of taking away from that me time. But now you're seeing, both of you, it's like taking those moments in the morning or throughout the day, or when you need them, be like, wait, I got to check in with me. I got to check in with Daryl, or I got to check in myself with Randy and John. I got to check with myself. And it's like, and what is that? And that's what these practices help us to do. It's just kind of check in. And every time we check in, we begin to raise that emotional intelligence of ourselves. And let's just go there. Like, what are these practices teaching about yourself emotionally, right? But also how you're being emotionally reactive or responsive in your relationships and your work. We can go there. So I'll start you, Randy, since you're on a roll before.
Oh, and I'll just clear up the last part where you talked about how we share that with other people. I'm very close-hold, but my wife is very open, and we'll go and just share everything. I'm like, shut the hell up. What are you doing? This is our dirty laundry. And she's like, I don't know what the hell to do. She's like, somebody out there will have a clue or an idea to try something. But all I've tried to do since bringing this on is just, I'll mention it to some of my friends or prior coworkers. I'm like, hey, this has worked for me. I can't tell you, will it work for you or not? I don't know. But I'll tell you what it is doing for me. And it changed. I'm like, you just got to give it a try, and you got to give it a try for a little bit. It's not, you can't pull up at the drive-through and zip through there and then you're like, oh, I'm good to go. So
yeah. Well, tell us about your journey emotionally, Randy, as far as like what, maybe some of the things that have kind of shocked you as you practice about yourself emotionally, and also maybe some of the lessons that you've been gathering or information been gathering about, how emotions are so tied into our experience.
Yeah. So I've never really been in control of my emotions per se. I don't think so. I never really acknowledged them. I'm just, it is what it is. And I'm a jerk about it. Unfortunately, sometimes I get extremely competitive. Why I have a lot of self-doubt. I feel I have to prove myself all the time. And even if we're friends, and I was mentioning it was Joe Bright when we were going through the challenge together, I'm like, hey man, I'm glad you're here on this journey, but I get extremely competitive. I want you to be successful and do all of this, but man, I'm going to compete against you. And I don't want to do that. Because it ruins, I found it's ruined some friendships. I'll have maybe some expectations that I expect from other people. I'm like, you're not meeting those expectations, so you're dead to me, and I'm moving on to somebody else. And so that's what when I talk about it, it's ruined some of my relationships, and even with some members of my family. Like, I expect a lot of things from them, and then if they have a hiccup or something, I'd be like, all right, you're dead to me, moving on. And I don't even hold myself accountable to those same things. I'm like, sometimes I'm pissed at myself because I didn't do something. And so I start getting defensive and bringing it out on them and be like, well, I don't want to be around you, because then I got to take a look at myself in the mirror. But what mindfulness has done to me, done for me with in the group that I'm in, and we meet once a week. They introduced me to this thought model process. You know, we talk about circumstances, thoughts, feelings, actions, and results. And we spent about a month. Every time we would have an emotion, we'd experience an emotion, just try to peel that back. Hey, what's going on? Why do you feel that way? What are the thoughts that are going in your head? What can you do to control that? You know, and I'm like, man, I'll drive my car and get pissed at everybody on the road. I'm like, why are you in front of me? Why are you passing me? Why am I stuck at this red light? Or if I go to the store, I'm like, why do I got to stand in line? Why do you have 50 things? I need you to have one. I need to get in, and get out. And I'm like, why do I think or feel that way? And I've heard, you know, John talk about it before. I'm like, man, if my daughters could hear the things that I'm thinking in my head, I'd be pretty embarrassed. Or my grandkids could think that.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's a really powerful way of looking at things. I mean, I say things very much like you just mentioned, Randy, all day long, every day. There's, as a matter of fact, Dr. Seth Hickerson, who was on last week and earlier in the season, he sent something to me and Will from a mindfulness convention that he went to the other day or a couple weeks ago, and it was up on the slides, and it said, I whisper to myself at least 10 times a day, what the fuck? And I was like, it's got to be at least 50 times a day for me. and I mean, it is very much about, hey, why is this person on my butt in the car? You know, why is this red light taking so long? Why am I in line so long? It is stupid stuff like that.
yes.
But then you're right. That was a great way of mentioning how to look at it. Is like, hey, if your kids could hear how you think all day, what would they think of that? And I would be thoroughly embarrassed if they could hear what runs through my mind all day, every day. So,
Yeah. Wow. How about you, Daryl, as far as like what you're noticing about yourself emotionally, you know, through this mindfulness journey that you're on?
Well, first off, Randy, thank you for sharing all that, man. Like that's
Yeah.
powerful stuff right there, because I can tell you right now that I and a lot of people that I know can relate to all of those things that you said and the thoughts that you have. And the one thing I would say, and this is something that I'm learning, is like, give yourself grace, man. You got to give yourself grace for those things, because we're all, you know, we're all working on this, and we're going to be working on it until the day that we move on. Right. So give yourself grace for that, and don't feel guilty about it, because, you know, that kind of leads into what I was going to talk about, is that like the biggest emotion that I feel almost on a regular basis is guilt for one thing or another. You feel guilty about things that you can't control, and you feel that you could, things that you could control and you would do differently. Sometimes you even feel guilty about things that haven't even happened yet, just assuming how the outcome's going to come. And one of the things that I've learned is that, like, again, it goes back to the treat others as you would want to be treated. Like, you're not going to pound people into the ground for a minor mistake, but you damn sure are going to do it to yourself. You know, you're not going to push people to their absolute limits to achieve something for very little return, but you're damn sure going to do it to yourself, right? And the thing that I'm starting to learn, I have not completely learned this yet, still working on it, but the thing that I'm starting to learn is that just as you would show grace to others, you know, just as you would hopefully show grace to your wife or to your children, the people in your life that you love, you got to show it to yourself. But you don't get there unless you actually think about it, right? Because our first instinct is to hold ourselves accountable one way or another. At least when we start to give a shit, that's what we do, right? When we don't care, then, you know, we never really want to do that. But when we do care, and we care about how we treat each other, how we treat those we love and people that are just walking down the street, we tend to feel, I tend to feel relatively guilty about those things. And guilt's a sickness, man. Guilt is it'll eat at you. You know, it'll be one of those things that never goes away, and you can always make guilt fatter. You know, guilt's not easy to trim down, but it's easy to make fatter. Right? It's basically like me after 35, right? It's a whole lot easier to get fat, but it ain't easy to get in shape.
all of us, brother, all of us.
But that's one of the things. And then the other side of it is like being patient. But I think it all goes back to grace, being patient with with people that we hold to a certain standard, and patience with ourselves, and patience with ourselves. It got to like, so when I first came out of the Army, my son, he was very young, and he was about 2 years old. And I guess I fussed so much, and I would give the old knife hand, right? Drill sergeant knife hand, right? That's how I would point to things. It wasn't, it was the knife hand. Hey, fix yourself, right?
A 2-year-old.
Yeah, to a
Fix yourself,
2-year-old, right?
2-year-old. Right.
So my 2-year-old started to knife hand when he talked as well, and that's when I was like, oh no, this isn't good. So I started to fix that demeanor. Like, I'm not my kid's sergeant. Like, I'm not my kid's NCO. My job is not to be their boss. My job is to be their father. And when it comes down to it, what does that mean? What does it mean to be a father? It means to be somebody who's supportive, who guides you, holds you accountable, but who teaches you what you're supposed to do with your life and how you're supposed to live it. But I'm going to tell you, I didn't know how to live my life. And I'm, again, still figuring this out.
Mm-hmm.
But recognizing the importance of those things is, again, it brings back that guilt. But I've got to show myself grace on that. And those feelings, taking that anger and turning it into, taking that second to bammo, right? To breathe and move on. When it comes to the way my kids react to me, because there was a time where if the most minor thing went off kilter, that they would straight up be afraid. And I've never laid my hands on my children. Like, we don't do the spanking thing or anything like that. Never had to. Let me rephrase that. I've never had to. And so, but they would still be afraid. And I'm like, that's my demeanor. That's the way that I'm acting, the way that I'm reacting to things, man. I need to fix this. This is a me problem, So those are kind of some of the things that as you take a step back and you slow things down, stop thinking about later and think about right now, because that right now is what they're going to remember, right? That right now reaction, that right now interaction is the thing 10 years down the road when they're older and they're telling stories. Those are the things they're going to talk about. They're not going to talk about the toys or the candy or any of that stuff. They're going to talk about the way that you treated them, the way that you reacted in a situation you may never, ever remember because it was just one of many for you. But for them, it drastically affected the way that they're going to turn out as an adult. And you just do your best and try to learn, hey, take a second, think about this stuff. Every single thing you say when it comes to your kids matters for a long time. So,
Wow. Yeah,
Wow. Thanks,
a
Daryl.
buddy of mine, also a SEAL, a former SEAL, he started practicing when he was great at work. He get to work, put this mask on, be this perfect person at work, and then when he would go home, he would take that mask off and be kind of the worst version of himself, or he would give his best to his work and he would give the leftovers to home. And he said he came home one day, he had been awesome at work all day, even though he had been putting out fires left and right all day. He gets home, takes that mask off, and his kid spilled some milk. And he started yelling at his kid and realized, you know what? The old saying, it's not worth crying over spilled milk, but it's not worth yelling at your kids over, because now that milk is spilled. But guess what? You've also given your kids the leftovers of who you are and given the best of yourself to work. New York City back there, baby. I love it.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
So anyhow, so I totally get that. And he ended up yeah, give yourself grace, right? For New York City. Give New York City some grace. But anyhow, that was what led him to start practicing, was realizing that he was not giving his best to his family, to those he loved, and a lot of the time that's where we make the mistake just as human beings, is we put on these masks of perfection, supposed perfection at work, that wears us out, wearing that mask, wearing that false armor, carrying around that false shield. And then we come home and we drop all that at the door, and now we feel as though it's our place to vent on everyone, or it's our place that it's okay to lose our temper. And if we are able to practice mindfulness and meditation, that can actually change who we are at home and improve who we are at work.
Right.
So,
The craziest thing about that, John, is that it's so true, and I've been there. And that the thing is that it's an incredible dynamic that the one place that you are irreplaceable for so many of us, that gets our leftovers, right? If we, you can be the most elite warrior who takes years and years and years of training to get where you are as a SEAL. You can be all those types of things, but if you leave within, let's just say, within a matter of months, you were replaced, right?
Yeah.
So everything that you've put in there can be completely replaced. But as a father and as a husband or a significant other, like, that's the one place you can't be replaced. And somehow we still, I still give that's where my leftovers go. And that's not where my efforts have been throughout my life. And the one place that needs you the most. It's an insane dynamic that, man, it's just mind blowing.
Yep.
Hey, Daryl, I got two questions.
Yeah, go for it, Randy.
I got two questions for you, Daryl. One, I've heard John talk about this in another challenge, but I've heard Will talk about it too, and you're talking about grace, so I appreciate that. Have you wrote a letter to yourself?
No, I'm not actually. No.
Great exercise.
Hey, man, that is tough.
It might take me a few months to get through. I'm not gonna lie. We'll talk about emotions. I might start crying as soon as I'm done writing "Dear Self." Right? Like, that's it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tell us about your experience, Randy. Yeah, tell us about that experience, Randy, writing a letter to yourself, and what prompted that, or where'd that come from?
Well, some of it is through the continue on with the challenge, writing letters and being grateful for people and gratitude. And then I've heard, and you've talked about it here on the show, like, hey, sometimes write yourself a letter, drop it in the mail, and pick it up. So I haven't mailed it, but I've written myself a letter, be like, I just think about the Michael Jordan SNL clip where he's standing in front of the mirror, daggone it, people like you, you're a good person. If you remember that clip from SNL.
Oh yeah.
But it's like just the things that I've done, and it's just hard to say that, hey, I'm okay. Hey, I am a good person. I do have good qualities. I have done good stuff. I am proud of myself on this aspect, and that is very hard to do. Yeah, Daryl, man, I cried. So, but give it a try, man.
I have a ton of respect for you that you did that, and you just admitted that you cried, because not many men will stand here and talk to this big audience and say that, and that is nothing to be ashamed of, and it's you should be proud of the fact that you did that for yourself, man.
Thanks, I appreciate it. The other thing I had for you is, how old are your kids now? And the reason I asked that question is because my daughters, I started early, so my daughters are 27, and they're going to kill me, 27 and 25. But as they've gone out on their own and created their own lives and everything, and I've been on this journey, and every now and then they'll bring it up. They'll talk about when they were growing up, they were scared to talk to me about a few things. And we talked about a lot. My daughters told me the first time they had sex, and I'm like, those are things you don't tell your father. But we talked about everything, but there were times they were scared to talk to me, just like you said. And they said, I got a look on my face. And they're like, when I got a look and the lips get pursed and tense, they're like, oh, that's it. So
run for the hills.
Yeah. They're like, we're not going to say anything. We're just going to stand here and just take the lecture. Cause I didn't spank neither, but moving forward, so I'm trying to do a new approach with my grandkids and teach my daughters, like, hey, we're trying this stuff. We're all trying this together as a family in different cities and whatnot. Have you noticed a change with my daughters have noticed a change of like, wow, this shit is working. Like, I need to get in on some of this with you.
There you go. Yes.
So have you noticed a change with you and your kids or at all? Or
I will tell you that they are much quicker to engage in situations where previously they would not have. One of the things that I've tried to since I've started practicing, one of the things I've tried to really instill in them is like, look, if I'm teaching all this do as I say, not as I do thing, like that is not okay. Like I need, if I set a standard and you recognize that, hey, you said that this is the way, like be respectful about it. Don't gloat in it, be respectful about it. But, tell me, hey, look, Dad, you got to do this. I'd like for you to do this a little bit better. We're watching, right? So, I don't think they would have ever been able to do that before. And to answer your question, they're 8, 11, and 13. So okay. I'm hoping I've got time.
Yeah, no, you got time.
Yeah. And this is like what I've learned. Some of the things I've learned as I've gone through my journey of mindfulness and just, becoming a better person is like the best training ground that you can the best training ground is within the family. Yeah. It could be with your kids. It could be, I don't have any kids, but it could be, with the other loved ones in your life, because those are the ones that, we hold the most, love and respect and less likely, or just kind of, there's some sort of reverence there of family that if you really begin to practice these tools, or just becoming more patient and just be more present and more listening to family members, you're going to be more likely to bring that into the workplace. That's going to be into your other relationships. And, so, I mean, the family, we keep talking about it, is such a great place. Anybody that's listening to begin to practice these skills. And it could be also, you mentioned, I think, modeling earlier, Daryl, like modeling things like vulnerability or asking questions, or just like, or asking for help, which, can be very, tough for men, as we've talked about many times before. And imagine what your kids, by seeing you being vulnerable, but also seeing you practicing, as a person, as like with me time, or practicing as a family gratitude, or taking a couple breaths together before like a ball game, or, maybe sitting down at dinner and practicing gratitude, or taking a few breaths. And it can really become a very powerful and force that also kind of bonds all of us together in some ways in a deeper level. And then you'll be more likely, because of those successes and that feeling that you're having a family, it's like, whoa, this stuff is very effective, because it allows us to work from our heart space instead of our ego, which you're kind of relating to earlier, Randy. It's just like, oh, I want this, that, and the other thing, and why isn't the world meeting my needs? Whereas like just getting into that space of being present, which helps us to get deeper into our true nature, which is that heart space. There's a lot that can come out of that, and then translate into other areas of your life.
That was beautifully said, Will. Like, that was awesome. That was great.
No. Thank you, Daryl. I appreciate that, dude. I appreciate that.
That might be the soundbite that kicks off this episode.
That was awesome. That was great.
Thanks.
All right, well, fellas. Yeah, what have we not spoken about that you guys want to make sure the audience hears, if there's anything that we missed? Randy?
Just, hey, thanks for the opportunity. Thanks for being here, and give it a try and stick with it. There's no there, and it's just a journey that you're on.
Curiosity, Randy, talk about that stick with itness. You know what I mean? Like, how was that a challenge, or both of you, like to really like begin to bring mindfulness into like a daily or several times a week kind of practice? Like, maybe that's something we can touch on, because like I think that's something important to hear about. Like, what does it mean to like begin to weave mindfulness into your day, and what does that look like for you guys? Might be a great way to finish.
Well, you want me to go, Daryl? You want to go?
Go ahead, Ryan.
Well, yes, it's hard. For me, and I can speak for me, it's hard. Something I have to practice every day. Something I have to just sometimes I force myself to do it because I don't want to do it. I'm like, I'll just get up. I'm like, I don't want to do it today. And there's other days where I'll do it, and I'll just be like, man, I'm ready to tackle the world. And I figured like Wonder Woman, she's got those bracelets on, and she can just like just block it all out. And this morning for me was like as mentioned before, it was like just a shit show from the get-go. Little sleep, the young guy up. I got to get him dropped off. The dog is sick. Problems in the house everywhere. I'm like, oh my God, this can't get any worse. Construction outside my house. There's one lane. I'm like, when the hell did this start? Driving my grandson to get him off. I see on my return highway back, there's a wreck and it's closed down. I'm like, what the F is going on? And I'm just like, just, man, fuck it. I can control how I manage all this. Just breathe. I'm like, man, if I freak out and get nuts and take it out on my grandson or my dog, like, get dressed, let's go, we got to get there. And it's ridiculous. So man, just some 4-7-8, some breathing I've been practicing recently for a while. So just doing that in the car. Remembered calming the mind from the mindfulness program that you guys are part of. Fired that thing up and listened to that twice on the way back home. And I'm like, man, I can only control what I can control, and I can absolutely control myself because I'm able to recognize these emotions thanks to mindfulness.
Boom. Wow. That's a freaking commercial right there. Thank you, Randy. That's awesome for mindfulness. That's beautiful.
We didn't pay him,
And
everyone.
how about you, Daryl? Yeah.
So I think it's just like anything, right? I think, you guys are familiar with what a flywheel is, right? It's a heavy disc that goes on a shaft and for a spinning object. And the idea behind a flywheel is that as it turns, it picks up momentum and it reduces the necessary energy that it takes for any mechanical object to spin. But the thing is about a flywheel is that for that flywheel to start turning requires an immense amount of energy to start, right? And so just like with anything in life, whether it's working out or starting a business or practicing mindfulness, anything that requires a long-term commitment, you've got to put in that extra energy in the beginning. You got to push on this thing over and over and over again. And every day you're expending a ton of energy to get this flywheel turning. But eventually, once you've got up to a certain revolutions per minute, it becomes natural. The force of the flywheel, the weight of the actual disc itself is what's creating that force, is what's creating that motion and that movement. So as I started to get into practicing, and I'm still on the early stages of pushing that flywheel, but every day that I continue to do this and I put that energy towards it, the next day's turn becomes easier. And then the next day's turn of that flywheel becomes easier. And then just at some point, and I know this to be true because of a number of different things that I've done in my life that this analogy applies to, is that at some point it becomes natural and it becomes a part of what's happening. At some point, that flywheel is just another part of that turning shaft in that mechanical piece of equipment. It's just spinning, right? You don't need to add that additional outside force, because at the end of the day, that flywheel takes less energy over the long term. It creates a situation where there's less energy expended over the long term. It's the same thing in practicing mindfulness or practicing anything for that matter.
Yeah.
Pushing on that flywheel early on and getting it going.
Yeah. Wow. And it takes, like you said, it takes effort to get it going, but once it's going, and then it's in motion. Awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And Jens, as far as our listeners, our viewers, if they wanted to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you? Daryl, start with you.
On LinkedIn, Daryl Roy on LinkedIn, or send me an email, daryl.roy@3dmedia.io. And, if you want to talk, want to learn, just want to be a pal, feel free to reach out.
There you go.
Nice.
Randy?
Thanks, Daryl.
For me, I'll just give you my cell phone number and shoot me a text. So,
jeez, all right.
702-306-1868. So, if I don't pick up, leave a voicemail, or shoot me a text.
Yeah.
Sorry, man. I was probably talking over you again, man. What was that number? One more time.
The number is 702-306-1868.
Right on, brother. Cool. Well,
Fantastic.
This has been awesome. We'll wrap it up with a closing practice, and then we'll call it done. And after the closing practice and after the closing credits, if you will, hang tight. We'll have a little post-show discussion. All right. So awesome. That said, go ahead and get into that comfortable position, whatever that looks like for you. I'm personally going to close my eyes. If you don't feel like closing your eyes, or if that's not comfortable for you, just stare down the bridge of your nose. We're going to do something similar to what we did at the beginning with the 4-7-8 breathing, but this is just going to be triangle breathing, again, similar to Bach's breathing. But we'll begin by breathing out as much air as we can, bringing our navel to our spine. Breathe in for 4. Hold for 4 at the top of the triangle. 2, 1. Breathe out for 4. 3, 2, 1. And now in for 4 again. Hold for 4. 3, 2, 1. Out for 4. 3, 2, 1. Immediately back into in. Hold for 4 at the top. Out for 4, 3, 2, 1. Last one. In for 4. Hold for 4. And out for 4. 3, 2, 1. Now just breathe naturally. Stay in the practice. Breathing naturally and paying attention to that breath. Paying attention to this time and this space. If you've noticed that your mind has wandered off, that's perfectly natural. Don't beat yourself up. Don't get frustrated. Don't judge yourself. Just bring yourself back to the here and the now, paying attention specifically to the physical sensation of breathing. And we'll close with one deep cleansing breath together. Begin again by breathing out all your air. Navel to your spine. Breathe in deep in through your nose. And let it go. Nice and slow. Slow and relaxed. Relaxed and slow. Now, when you're ready, start to come out of the practice. Maybe bring some movement back in your body. Move your head around. Blink your eyes open if they were closed. And here we are. Gents, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for your thoughts. Thanks for who you are and what you're doing every day. It's been phenomenal having you on the show. It's been a true honor.
Likewise, I appreciate it. I appreciate speaking with you, and I appreciate what you're doing on this show. This show makes a difference in my life for sure, and I'm pretty certain that a lot of men feel the same way.
Right on. Thanks, Daryl.
Thank you. Love you guys, man.
Love you back. All right. Take care. Peace.
Thanks for joining Will and John on Men Talking Mindfulness. If you enjoyed the show, please like and share it with your friends and family, and please, we would appreciate a review too. Until next time, this has been Men Talking Mindfulness. Thanks for showing up.